Good afternoon, everybody. Welcome to the TraderMerlin Show. Hope you had a fantastic trading session out there. If you, it really wasn't, well, at least for me, it was not a good trading day. I'll talk about trades I took. I had one losing trade today on the S&P, unfortunately, but other than that, no, not too much going on in my trading other than just holding some cryptos right now. Now, today's show is slightly different. I know that normally we talk about the markets right away to start. I wanted to go into a topic that for me is almost foundational to the financial markets, which is debt and understanding the difference between good debt and bad debt. Because if you are in debt, every trade that you make that's winning is being eaten away at by your debt. So we'll talk a lot about the debt side of it today because I had multiple questions from different people coming in on debt. One from, it wasn't Scott or Kevin or something like that. And then Patrick also sent in one, which we'll talk about that, Patrick. So thank you for the question. FX Telepath says, Dave is so confused right now. Are you talking about Mr. Ramsey? This certainly is not going to be an attack on any industry expert out there. This is my own perspective and kind of what I model my personal growth after with regards to debt and understanding how I can grow my wealth. Because ultimately, isn't that what it's all about, is growing our wealth? Obviously, we want to grow our wealth as quickly as possible and afford all the things that you want. But sometimes it's a very slow process. And if you don't overcome certain obstacles, you'll probably never make it out of debt, and you'll always be, against the grain, so to speak. So here's what we're looking at for today. Good debt versus bad debt. Now, most of you probably are on the left-hand side of the screen. I'm assuming, just knowing and having conversations with you guys over the years, most of you probably understand the components of debt and what the difference is between good debt and bad debt and how to make it work for you. But I thought I'd do something a little bit different. I'm going to start with this question right here, which is from Gabe. It says, the other day you talked about good debt and bad debt. What's the difference? It's all debt is bad. I 100% disagree with this. I would make the assertion that rich people are rich because they're using good debt. Obviously, they get to the point sometimes where they're just all cash for everything. In my opinion, poor people are poor because they use bad debt. And it ultimately comes back down to bad decisions and understanding the ramifications for using debt. For example, I'm always hard on credit cards because God, some of these things go to 29% interest. And if you think that you'll just buy the S&P and hold it over time, great. The average is 8 to 10%. Let's be generous and call the S&P rate of return 10% per year. If you're holding debt on your credit card, you're paying 28% per year. So 28, 29, depends on which credit card you have. That means you're losing 19% net on your net worth just by those two simple math variables. So let's understand it and fix it so we don't put ourselves in a bad situation. I'll talk about good credit cards, bad credit cards, etc. So, Gabe, I'm going to start with your question about difference between good debt and bad debt. It's very simple. Good debt is borrowing money at whatever rate it may be and making sure that what you're doing with it gives you something in return that has some substantial value. For me in the financial markets, if I'm borrowing money or using money that costs me 2%, or let's just say it's 5%, then it had better be working for me to earn a greater rate of return than 5%. If not, then I shouldn't be using borrowed money, period. It's very simple. Bad debt is something that you borrow and you usually spend that money on something that just depreciates or is worthless. So, for example, if you look at, one second, I've got one window open here, so it's going to keep beeping during the show. If you look at buying a car, a lot of people would make the argument that a car is bad debt. And I disagree because a car has utility, right? A car is going to get you from point A to point B. It's going to get you to work. Now, could you use a bus? Yeah, I guess you could use a bus. A lot of people don't want to ride buses. In Europe, it's much more acceptable to ride buses. Here in the States, you're almost looked down on for riding buses. So if underlying pays itself, yeah, and Mario, I think good debt doesn't necessarily have to pay itself off. It just, so for example, if you spent $100,000 on a college degree, there's a lot of people that would question, is that degree worth $100,000? Well, ultimately, if you utilize it and be proactive and go out there and say, okay, I've got this degree, I'm going to go out and really push to make it work for me, meaning I'm going to go be active looking for jobs and do whatever I can to get a career out of this, then it's probably a good investment, I would say. But a lot of college graduates will graduate with a college degree and say, okay, now everyone's going to come to me and ask me to work for them. Well, that would be bad debt because now you're stuck with $100,000 worth of college debt and you're probably going to end up flipping burgers at McDonald's. I mean, you have to be active with these things. So Mario says, I only use bike and public transportation. I wish I could say the same. I will be using my electric bikes a lot more. Yes, Lisa says divorce debt equals bad. Well, they say that a divorce can ruin your accounts faster than a bad trade. But we'll go down that path. So I want to come up with a very simple way to explain this to everybody. And again, most of you know this, but no, Kenny says no roll call. You know what, Kenny? Just for you, I'll give you a roll call. Actually, I'm glad to have Catherine. This is 2 days in a row. So we got Catherine, Lori, Brendan, who will be in and out. I'm sure he likes to jump in and out of these things. But good to have you with us, Brendan. Tom, as usual, we've got Kenny, who loves the shout out, so we'll do that today. Big Eb, of course. I got Lori, Thomasina, Mario, who also sent in some questions. I will get to those. Susan. Hello, Susan. We've got Eric, Tibor, and FX Telegraph, of course. There you go. You're happy now, Kenny? We got your shout outs. Good. Anyway, good to see you guys all with us today. So I'm going to make this very, very, very simple. I'll also show you some resources you guys can get to for free. Again, my assumption is that most of you know this stuff. My hope is that you maybe have some younger, maybe you have some kids or some friends who are in a bad debt situation and just don't understand why they're in that situation or how to get out of it. So this should be given to them afterwards. Say, hey, just watch this. Take 30 minutes and watch this video, because what I'm about to get into will be that key to growing your wealth. And if you want to say getting rich, then call it getting rich. But bottom line is you got to get your ass out of debt before you can even think about trading actively or making money in crypto or stocks, options, futures. You got to get yourself out of debt. So what does it start with? It starts with a very simple formula. Now, I wrote this one out. This is not something that I learned in college. I basically made this up myself, and I love it. It's this. It's I minus D plus E equals DI. That's my formula. I penned this one. And basically, this to me is the formula for disposable income. Now, it's funny. It's almost an oxymoron, right? There is no such thing, in my opinion, as disposable income. I'm not throwing this income away. But what it means really is, after this formula, it's going to give you a number. And if that number of DI is positive, now you have the foundation to go ahead and start doing things that can build your wealth, like invest in cryptos, invest in stocks, options, futures, these types of things. Even education can potentially be down here and spent on to help increase your personal growth, your net worth, etc. So I'll go through each one of these. First and foremost, let me go and show you a couple things. What I would encourage you guys to do is, if you go to tradingacademy.com, I'll bring that page up. If you look at the cross of the page here at tradingacademy.com, there's a thing that says tools. If you click on tools, it says calculators, and there's a ton of amazing calculators here that you can use for all sorts of things. Credit card, snowball debt eliminator, minimum payment calculators, you have investment, you have all sorts of different ones, and I think that they're all great with regards to helping you understand where you stand, even college planning and stuff like that. The one that we'll probably want to focus on the most is under personal finance. It's called the home budget analysis. This is going to be a major factor in what I'm talking about here today, and most people don't take this stuff seriously. So if we go back to this, I is for income, right? You take that first letter, the I in that formula at the top, it stands for income, and basically this is any money you have coming in. And yes, it should be legal money, your W-2s, or if I know other people live out of the country. If you've got money in, if you're incoming from a job, great. If you've got alimony checks coming in, if you have royalty checks coming in, if you are doing illegal activities and have a steady income coming from that, put that down as income. You need to know how much money you have coming in. That's probably the most important piece. I can't say the most important. They're all really important. All three of these variables are critical. So you come in there and you say, all right, here's how much money I'm making. That's the easiest one for us to figure out, because most are just simply a W-2. You got a full-time job, great. Some are in a gig economy, so you got 3 or 4 different things. Some might fluctuate dramatically. For example, if you're an Uber driver, you might do real great one week and then really poorly in the next week or two. So you kind of have to maybe estimate in some of those situations. Of course, you could use your tax return and look at your income there. Now, the second one is where we start to really address the problems that just kill people. Number 1 there is going to be your D, or debt. This to me is the killer for most, and the credit card debt is right at the top of this. If we were to prioritize debt, and Patrick, I know you sent in a question dealing with some debt issues that we'll talk about if we have time as an example on today's show. If you have a list of debt, what I would encourage you to do is anything that you are paying interest on, credit cards, student loan, car payments, anything where you have borrowed money, even your mortgage, right? Put that down in an Excel spreadsheet. put it in an Excel spreadsheet, have a column that says, what is that debt, okay? And then what is the current balance that you have on that debt? And then probably the most important piece for me out of this is, what rate of interest are you paying on that debt? Almost all the time, credit card will be the number one. Whether it's 17% credit card or 20% credit card, put that, whichever one's the highest, and prioritize that entire list of debt by which one is charging you the most interest. You have to get rid of that first, period. So we put down all of our debt, and that comes out to a bulk number. So I'm going to use an example here. Let's say I've got a $60,000 income. That's my I, right? And let's say that's my job plus some other pieces coming in. Number two, let's say I have, and I would do this monthly. So let me take that back. So let's say I've got $5,000 a month coming in an income, right? If that's $60,000 a year. And let's say that I have, I don't know, $2,000 worth of debt. Okay, so $2K. And that might be my car loan, might be some student loan debt, and most of the time, as I mentioned, a lot of credit cards. So right away, I'm already eating up almost half of my income in debt, which is common for Americans. I don't know what it's like for the rest of the world. Third variable here is the most challenging one for us to figure out, which is expenses. This is basically how much you are spending on everything. And that's where I really want you guys to do this as an experiment for yourself, is go to this calculator called the Home Budget Analysis Calculator. I'll even create a shortcut for you. I think that it will show up if I put it here. Hopefully that link showed up in chat. That Home Budget Analysis, you simply start putting in all of your different variables, how much money you're making. You can see here you've got utilities, so you can click on utilities, put in all those factors, net income from you, insurance, food, expenses. And when I say expenses, I mean everything. Like, are you spending $5 a month on a magazine subscription? That's an expense, right? You need to have every number itemized and mapped out. Another thing that you guys can do is, I have an app on my phone that allows me to track all my spending. And I put it in there. I don't do it every month, but I'll probably do it once every few months just to see how much I'm spending and where that money is spent. The one I have is on the App Store. It's called Expense, E-X-P-E-N-S-E. It's the Expense app. And basically what that will do is, I'll start, like, let's say, what are we in? We're in August. So let's say September 1st. From September 1st till the end of September, I will put down every single transaction and income and expense that is possible in my life. And that way I can see where all my money is going. For many, it'd be an eye-opener. I realize, man, I spend a lot of money eating out at different restaurants. So expenses is critical. Now, once you run those three numbers, your income, your debt, and your expenses, you start to add it up. And let's say, for example, my expenses run me around $3,000 a month. All right, if that's the case, my income's $5K a month, my debt's $2K a month, and my expenses is $3K a month, I'm at zero. I have no money for disposable income. I have no money to pay down my debt faster. I'm basically going to go nowhere. So what I immediately have to do is say, I need to change one of these three variables. I have to go out and find a way to either increase my income, I have to reduce some of my debt, or I have to start cutting expenses. And for most of us, the easy solution is the expenses, right? Find things that you're sitting there going, man, this is stupid. I'm not paying for anything like this. I'll give you another really good example. Brandon Wendell, who you guys know has been on the show many times, he uses a website called Stock Fetcher, and I think it's like $49 a month. Like 6 years ago, he gave me a username and password to look up some charts. I've been using that thing for years. I'm pretty sure Brandon has completely forgotten that he's using Stock Fetcher, which basically means that that's $49 a month that he could save by putting it in just closing that account. Recurring payments, right? Recurring payments. Oh yeah, don't forget to add the dog in. My buddy, my dog is just it's an expense. He's a big expense. $400 in vet bills last week. But yes, add everything in. I mean, even if it's as simple as I bought a pack of gum, magazine subscriptions. If you have a gym membership and you haven't been to the gym in 4 months, cancel your gym membership. You're not going to use it. Get over it. Do push-ups at home. Do jumping jacks. Do something in your house, and then go. But there's always places that we can cut corners. One of the examples I like to use when I build the credit class for Online Trading Academy was, one individual was looking at buying a new car. So they buy a BMW 330i. Well, now all of a sudden they're stuck with a $600 a month payment on that thing. Well, you know what? I could have gone out and bought a Nissan Leaf, which would have been probably around $300 a month. So I'm already saving $300 a month just on my car payment, and then also the Leaf's electric, so I don't have to pay all my gas bills. That just drops expenses significantly. So it's finding ways we can cut things down. Now, let's be fair here. This doesn't mean that you need to be a penny-pinching miser your entire life. But if your formula for disposable income is negative, and that's a negative number, you have to do something to get it back to a positive number. Otherwise, you will every day you'll be putting yourself deeper and deeper and deeper into debt. Okay, so that's your formula there. Now, I wanted to go to this comment here because I saw this one frequently and it drives me nuts. I know there's a lot of people that love Dave Ramsey. That's fine. I'm sure he offers some great advice. But he said this: you don't build wealth with credit card rewards and airline miles. You can't beat the credit card companies at their own game. I call BS on this one. And it's not that you're going to go break the credit card companies by using rewards and airline miles. However, I've mentioned this to you guys before on how I'm doing it. I am utilizing the credit cards. I am the one that they hate. We should all be the one that credit card companies hate. Make them, I know, Kenny, no one said a cool Nissan Leaf ever, but instead of paying $600 a month for a brand new car that, you probably don't need to have that, could you buy something used and maybe get your payments down to $450? Right? And all of a sudden you're not in a brand new car, you're not the fanciest, coolest kid on the block, but you can get a nice car for $450 a month. Right? Maybe you lease something and all of a sudden your payment now is $300 or $200 a month, and then I can take that money and put it back towards paying down my debt. So let me go to, I think credit cards, CARDS. So here's the rub with credit cards. They are one of the most usurious destroyers of wealth in the entire world if you let them get ahead of you. Meaning, we all hit hard times. We all get periods of time where we go, you know what, I don't have any money in my bank account. I need to use my credit cards. That's fine. But what you have to do immediately is bring in enough capital to pay down those credit cards and get that balance to zero. So your first goal, wrong, I have a friend who gets free vacations every year from credit cards. That's me, Brandon. I get free vacations every year from credit cards. And technically your friend doesn't get them for free. He has to pay a booking fee, which is usually like $56.70 because I've done it a few times. It depends on the airline. But yeah, I agree. You do get things for quote-unquote free. You still have to pay a booking fee. But honestly, my trip to Nepal and Cambodia was a $15,000 first-class ticket that I spent $57 on because of miles. So yes, I am using them. Again, I'm the nightmare for credit card companies. I have 5 apps on my phone for different credit cards. Every one of them is automated, linked up. Every one of those is paid in full every month, 100%. I never run a balance. I know I'm boasting, but I'm proud of it. I worked very hard to get that level. And once you do that, you take away the biggest killer of your financial freedom and debt ever, which is credit cards. So get those things paid to zero. Now, to go to this point about how can you use credit cards to your advantage? Because Dave is right. You're not going to beat the credit cards at their own game, but can I use credit cards to make my life better? 100%. And here's how. I mentioned this the other day. If you have multiple credit cards with high balances, let's say you have one credit card with a $5,000 balance, and that's paying 29% interest. You'll probably never pay that credit card down if you pay the minimum. If you pay the minimum, it'll just keep on going. 29%, just boom, boom, boom. It's perpetuity. Credit cards love you. So what you should do immediately, if you're in that situation, is go to a site like creditcards.com or any site that tells you the different components of credit cards. So look here. I'm going to go and click on card category. I want 0% APR. So what these guys will do, some of them will transfer over. So let's say, this is the first one I'm looking at. Intro balance, 0% APR in purchases, 0% balance transfer. You guys see this right here. 0% balance transfer for 18 months. So if I have one card that has $5,000 paying 29% interest and I open this City Diamond Preferred card, I'm going to transfer that entire $5,000 over, right? So I'm taking $5K worth of debt I'm paying 29% interest on. Even if it's 10%, move it. And then I'm going to move it over to this new credit card, which is going to charge me how much? 0. You have free money for 18 months. And in that next 18 months, any extra, that money that you would have been paying interest on that 29% credit card, you should pretend it's still there and just use that interest and pay down your credit card so that balance gets down to 0 as quick as possible. The trick is you got to make sure that at the end of those 18 months that you have paid off this balance, because there's some shady stuff that goes on behind the scenes where they might make it retroactive and all of a sudden you get a huge hit. Pay down that as quick as possible. But for me, this is Brendan, he's one of the major so Dave Ramsey and Susie Orman are like the big financial oracles in the U.S. I'm sure you have somebody in Canada who's, your resident financial expert that everybody talks about or goes to online. Larry M says 4% fee to move. It depends on the card. Let's see if this one has it. And again, it's a great point, Larry. Shop around because some will. Let's go card details. Sometimes it's a 0% fee. Let's see. Does it say anything about there's balance transfer fee? Okay. There is a balance transfer fee of $5 or 3% of the amount of each transfer, whichever is greater. Now, that's going to vary dramatically depending on which company you go with. So let me go back here and go to 0% APR. I've seen it at 1%. I've seen it actually at 0. So it just really depends on the credit card and how they're feeling that day. So best flexible cash categories, custom cash card, 0% APR. Let me go and see their details. 5% cash back, 1% thereafter. This one does not look like it's charging you a fee to rotate into them. 0% on balance transfers. Yep. This one does not say anything about fees. So certainly something you want to check on, but you're right, Larry. It is one of the variables in this space is saying, if I'm using a 0% balance transfer, what are the fees associated with it? There we go. Yeah, notice it's actually saying this is the transfer fees. Intro APR balance transfer is 0%. So they'll let you transfer it over at 0. Great. Again, these are all just little steps. There's a lot more to this, and I'm kind of running through it quickly here so I can get to some other materials. But I firmly believe that credit cards can actually be, I know this sounds almost counterintuitive, they can be a huge help in you reducing your debt. To me, that's good debt. Good debt is using the 0% balance transfer card, even if I have to pay 3%. If I have to pay 3% to move over that $5,000, right? What's that going to be? $150. That's a $150 fee. But if I pay 29% interest on that $5,000 for the next year, that's way more than $150, right? So right away, I'm already saving. Even though I'm spending, I'm still saving. So it's all about prioritizing that debt and saying, hey, let me get things down. Now, let me read a comment here that I think ties into today's discussion. And I want to make sure, I think he actually had some colorful language, but I want to make sure I cut it out. Okay, there we go. So there, read it. So this is from Patrick. And Patrick, I hope you're with us today, or at least watch the show. He says, let me write these numbers down because I have not reviewed them. I have 5K in Visa at 18%, right? So right away, you know what I'm going to say is you got to do something about this 18% APR. And have a line of credit for 15K. So we got $20,000 worth of debt already at 6%. Now, let's be honest, 6% is not that bad. I mean, it's certainly high, but you could do better here. It says, recently I bought a car off a family member. Later that week, some guy ran a stop sign, a T-bone, it totaled the car. After a month, I got a settlement check for $10,000, and I'm wondering if you could maybe give insight as to what to do with this check. The check is for the vehicle, but I have debt that I don't want to pay interest on anymore, but I need a car. Okay, great question. And this is, again, you're going to have to make your own decisions here, but here's how I would approach this. If this was me and I had these three variables, I got $5,000 worth of 18% credit card debt. I have a $15,000 line of credit at 6%. So $20K worth of debt, and now I've got a $10,000 check, but I have to buy a car. The question for me would be, what kind of car do I really need? Right? There's this main argument when it deals with finance, which is there's two categories, needs versus wants. Do I want to buy myself the brand new 2021 Toyota Tacoma double cab 4-wheel drive fully loaded? Hell yeah, I would. But does it make sense right now? To be honest, I don't think you're in a really bad debt situation, Patrick. The only thing that sucks on here is that 5K Visa. So what I would do personally if it was me and I was in the situation is I would look at the car market and I would say, I've got $10,000 in cash. Maybe I spend $5,000 or $7,500 of that on the vehicle that I will compromise with for the next year or two until I get my debt to zero. So let's say I decide to spend $7,500 of that $10,000 and pay down my debt. Right away, I can pay off that full $5,000 balance on that Visa card that's giving you 8%. And I still would have $2,500 extra to pay down some of my line of credit. You could also be doing what I was talking about, which is open a 0% balance transfer fee, move over your entire $5,000 to there, pay 0% interest on that, and maybe buy yourself a little bit nicer car. As Drew says here, used car. Yeah, I would agree. I think at this point, you have to tell yourself, again, needs versus wants. I want a new car, but what makes sense right now, since you're carrying debt, would probably be to go and buy a used car and not something top of the line, something to get you around. I know you probably want a nicer vehicle. We all do. But until you got both those numbers at zero, that 20K eliminated, I would say buy used and don't set that bar real high so that when you finally pay off your debt, you can reward yourself. How do you reward yourself? Well, maybe you put yourself in a little bit of debt, right, to buy a car that you really want as a reward for you. When you buy a car, if you buy new, I don't know what it's like in Canada, but now car makers, you can get anywhere between 0 and 3-4% for new. Sometimes it'll be like 6 or 8 depending on if it's used. So used rates are obviously going to be much higher. But yeah, it should be a reward for you. And right now, honestly, is the worst time I've ever seen to be buying a vehicle. Unfortunately, it is an awful time to be buying a car. So, maybe you buy something real bottom of the barrel just to get you around and I think in a year or two, we'll be back to normal and then things will be good time to buy a car. But right now, unfortunately, it's not the best time. So, Patrick, that's what I would do. I personally, if I had to say this is exactly what I do, I would open a new credit card, 0% balance transfer fee. Whatever they say my credit limit is, I'm going to move over the full balance. Even though it hurts my credit score, I'd move over everything you can from your Visa into that account. And then I would focus on paying down my student loan debt as much as possible. Whatever I had left over from the $10,000 car insurance settlement, I would pay down that as much of that $15K as I could, and I would focus on my expenses and say, I'm going to keep my expenses low until I get that debt paid off. If you're paying off debt that quickly, what that means is you are positive on that formula that I showed earlier, which was the DI, right? That means that in this equation right here, for you to be paying down your debt, you have disposable income, and you're using that disposable income constructively. Now, once you pay off your debt and your credit cards are at zero, mortgages, let's keep that as an exemption, right? You're not really going to pay your mortgage off quickly. So student loan debt you can get rid of, car loans you can get rid of, and credit cards for sure. Once you're at zero on those, now you can start taking that disposable income and saying, all right, I might be contributing that monthly surplus of capital I have into trading or investing accounts, regardless of if that's options, stocks, futures, whatever. Totally up to you what you want to get invested in. So, all right, 30 minutes of just credit and good credit versus bad credit. My income equals ? You don't know what your income is, Brendan? Well, see if I can get you a little bit of extra money here in the near future. I'm working on it. Still working on it. All right, let me scroll back because I know you guys sent in a bunch of questions. The personal rule after getting into big trouble with debt and almost going bankrupt is very simple, not as scientific. All debt must be collateralized. Well, I mean, yes, but you could say that a car is a collateralization for your loan. So, I don't know if it necessarily needs to be collateralized. I just think we always have to focus on what those numbers are and make sure we can pay them down. Let me see what I have. 3 budget business. Tibor, that's good. I have 3 budgets: business, home, and wife. Very different budgets, huh? We'll leave it alone. Brendan says, house prices in the U.S. rising at a fast pace than ever. Mentioned it today. How do you buy a home responsibly in a bubble? I personally don't think that you buy a home right now. I know it sounds awkward. It's tough. You have to make that trade-off between, do I lock in a 30-year fixed mortgage at 3% and pay a really elevated price for a piece of property, or do I wait a year, watch those prices come down 20, 30%, and then maybe the rates would be slightly higher, maybe get a 4% loan. But my assumption would be if the housing market crashes, they'll keep rates as low as possible just to help fuel that again. So, the bottom line is, even though prices are rising, the key to home ownership is making sure that you do the same thing. You look at these calculators, right? You look at your home budget analysis calculator, or you go even deeper into, I think there's actually a real estate purchasing one here, if I'm not mistaken. There's a rent versus buy calculator, which is a great one. And the reason I think this is so good is a lot of people find themselves in a situation where they buy more than they can afford, right? They really want a house. They end up buying this home. And ultimately what ends up happening is they can't make the payment. So a year, 2 years down the road, they're now using credit card debt and putting themselves deeper in that hole. And then 5 years down the road, they go into foreclosure on it and lose everything. You got to go into a property saying, can I afford this much per month? So let's say you're all in your pity, which is property tax, income, property taxes, insurance, and interest are a specific amount. So let's say that's going to be, $3,000 a month. If you can't afford $3,000 a month, meaning that DI number is less than $3,000, then you shouldn't be buying that home, because ultimately you will put yourself deeper into debt just to have that house. Now, the common belief is, oh, but I'm going to spend, I'm making this number up, $400,000 for this house, and it's going to be $500,000 next year. Yeah, it might. It might very well be $500,000 next year. It could also be $200,000 next year if the housing market crashes. And now you're stuck paying a certain amount of money for a home that's it's much lower valuation than what you paid for it. So that's the trick, I think, of real estate, at least from my perspective, is I'll never buy anything where I look at it and say, boy, this is a stretch for me. You know, and I always plan into what happens if I hit the skids? What happens if I'm out of work for a while? What happens if I don't have a job and my trading goes to pot, right? And all of a sudden I'm in a downward spiral here. You know, those are considerations you have to make. Most people just have the income to think about. And if you lose that income, how long could you survive making those mortgage payments? A lot of people don't think about that. And it's sad when you see people lose their homes. For example, the house that I purchased in 2009 was from exactly that. It was from a family who spent so much money remodeling this house. They basically tore it all down and rebuilt it into a pretty big house, and they stretched too far. And when that housing crisis hit in 2008, they lost everything. They lost the house, and I felt bad, but who was responsible with their investments? I was. Those guys stretched too far. They went a little bit beyond their financial means, and it caught them. So we always have to be thinking about that, because not everything runs up forever. We're in an amazing bull market for housing. We're in an amazing bull market for equities. Everything looks great right now. But when everything turns to shit, which it might happen at some point, I'm saying it will happen at some point, it's the nature of financial markets, then how long will you be able to survive in the home that you bought and maybe paid too much for? So, all right, let's see. Brendan, I love it. I just want to pay off my remaining $16K of mistakes. You'll get there. You'll get there. It's a little bit. Dave Ramsey makes statements about crypto that never age well. When it comes to crypto, Dave is his favorite word. Stupid. Yeah. Well, I like how he calls it crypto. I think that's pretty funny. All right. What else do I have? If you guys have questions, go ahead and type them in. I'm going to see if I can read here. Are real estate agents smart? Let's see. I think that when I was growing up, my father is a real estate agent, and honestly, he's one of the sharpest real estate minds on the planet. It's not just that I love my dad. My dad and I have an interesting relationship. I feel like there's not really a father-son relationship, but sometimes it feels like it's more business. But he's obviously my father, and I love him to death. But when it comes to real estate, I've worked with agents all over the U.S., right? I've had properties in multiple states, and I found some that are good and some that are absolute trash. I think some people basically take their real estate course and thinking they make a bunch of money. They got no people skills. They don't want to do the legwork. They're just being lazy. To the agent I worked up with in Big Bear, I would say, from my perspective, is a lazy agent. Terrible. You go to someone like my dad, he is going to do everything possible for his client, right? I mean, he's always looking for alternatives. He'll rip through that property himself with the inspector to just see if they're missing anything. And I think there's some agents out there that are awesome. I think there's some that are very, very good. As often as I can, I try to use my dad, not just because he's my dad, because I think he's probably the best real estate agent I've ever dealt with in my life. He's very, very thorough in what he does. So let's see. That's where disability insurance helped when I had to stop practicing. Yeah, right. And and that's a good point, Lori. And again, having insurance for things I guess for catastrophe type events is important, right? I know, and sadly, so many people, like I said, lost their homes in 2008 because they just overextended themselves. I was actually making sure I was pulling out of that market because, as you guys know, I was very bearish on the markets in 2007 and 2008. I got kicked off CNBC in January of 2008 because of my bearishness. And fortunately for me, I was basically just short the market. When the bottom fell out of it, I was like, oh, this looks like a good point to buy. I did not know it was the dead low. I got lucky. I think my mortgage, my documents for this house, I signed on March 13th, and the dead low, I believe, was March 12th of the equity markets. Kind of fun. I wish I could claim that it was just pure technicals, but no, that was luck. I just looked at it and said, man, we were way oversold in the housing market. I found a great deal and bought it. It just so happened it was a dead low of the market. Kind of funny. Can my dad come on this show? Sure. You probably wouldn't mind coming on this show one day. It's kind of weird because he's just very niche boutique. He does Sonoma County, so if you ever want to buy a home in Northern California, he'll happily help you out. I guess the question is, what topic would you like? So Diana Hill, who I usually bring on, she's much more in tune with what's going on all across the country, and looking at rental rates and income rates in a bunch of different areas. My father is, you want to know about Sonoma County, Northern California? He is the man. So if we want to talk about buying homes, the wine country considerations, I'll gladly bring him on, but I thought it might be a little too specific. I thought about it in the past. I think he'd probably enjoy that too. Okay, let's see. Mike says, if we start inflating, you should have a 30-year fixed rate on real estate, so you should buy now, and you'd be paying the cheaper dollars. Yes, correct. If you're locking your mortgage rate, and again, this is another important one. I actually know friends who have had adjustable rate mortgages, which in a market that's falling, like when we were up at 6, 7, 8%, okay, and it's drifting down, I'll go adjustable rate. Doing an adjustable rate mortgage right now, in my opinion, would be absolute insanity because the probability is higher the rates are going to go up. So first off, don't do an adjustable. Number two is locking in right now at a 30-year fixed at 3%, or even getting down into the low 2s if you do a 15-year. Yeah, if you know that if you feel the interest rates are going to be rising, then yes, it makes sense to lock it in. Mike, the challenge though is, am I going to buy an overly inflated house? And I haven't done the work to see where that crossover is of where's that price discovery. Meaning, if I pay at a 3% rate for the next 30 years, is it worth paying $200,000 more for the house today? Right? There's got to be some graphic out there I just haven't built out yet. We've already started inflating. Yes, we have, but then we came back down big. I remember we saw that spike up in the 10-year, and then it drifted back down. I think the next leg is coming, but we'll have to wait and see. Did my dad sell his house? No, I actually tried to hook him up. Steve, I don't know. I thought Steve was renting for a while. I don't know if he bought, but how fast do you think the housing market would turn? Would I have months to react, like shorting real estate ETFs? I don't think it's going to be one of these things that happens in a month, but I think what you'll see happen is as rates start to spike up, all of a sudden, pending home sales, new home sales, and existing home sales will start to stop their upward trajectory. The second thing we'll start to see is the Case-Shiller Composite 20 Home Price Index. You'll see that number not growing at 16% year over year. All of a sudden, it might jump from 16 down to 10. That's going to be a big drop. So when you start to see the rollover, I think from that point, you probably got 6 months to a year before it really all goes to hell in a handbasket. But I think it'll be a slow turn and then a quick slide. So my guess is you'll probably see the turn will be like a 3-4 month window, and then it'll start to fall quickly as all of a sudden the media starts to spread the news and disseminate the fear, as they love to do. Oh, housing bubble bursted, prices are crashing, and everyone's going, I gotta get out, and all of a sudden things come cratering down. So, it's funny because I go back and forth on a weekly basis. Do I sell this place? But shopping around for a rental property, because I would rent someplace for a year and hopefully buy back in when the market drops 30-40%. But when's that going to happen, right? I keep getting smoked on shorts on the equity markets as well. I mean, today was short the S&P, had a little set and forget order. Started off great, and all of a sudden ripped up and took me out. So, shorting is a challenging beast, especially when you have central bankers and the Federal Reserve who just backs this market up like nothing, non-stop. Let's see. So you're saying housing isn't volatile as Bitcoin or Dogecoin? Not that volatile. I mean, if you see the housing market drop 50% in a week, we got some major economic problems. It won't drop that fast. So no, definitely not that like. Yeah, Big Eb, he said PPI. Let's look at that. Actually, I have that up here today. Let me bring up that one. 1 second. Here is the numbers for today. This was noteworthy. I did not expect this. Given the numbers that happened yesterday with Consumer Price Index, which were very appealing. We were supposed to come out the previous month over month on CPI was 0.9. They expected it to come out at 0.5. We came out at 0.3. That's great, right? That's great. And so I was actually thinking that we'd see core PPI, which is what producers are paying for these same basket of goods and services. I expected that to drop to 0.5 or maybe even 0.4. Check it out now. Previous reading was 1.0%. They expected that to get cut in half. It's still 1.0%. The challenge here is when you look at CPI, which is Consumer Price Index, and Producer Price Index, PPI, the producers make the goods and services that the CPI are buying. So something's weird here. For some reason, the consumers' prices fell, but producers are still paying elevated prices to make their product. We know for certain that will get passed on to the consumer at some point. So I don't know, that was a weird disconnect we saw in the CPI and PPI numbers that came out yesterday and today. Unemployment numbers were perfectly in line with expectations. What else do I got? So you're saying housing is, I already got that one. Where was it? NJ. Principals are high, but rates are cheap. There's a high chance for rates to go up and then principal going down on mortgages, so buy a house now. And that's the question, NJ. I'm not exactly sure. Again, I think that there is a graphic out there somewhere, and I'm sure maybe one of you guys could find it quicker than I am because I'm doing so many other things, that says if rates are at this level, what does that equate to as far as a high housing price, right? Because if housing prices the principal value of my home falls from 500 to 300, well, great, I got a 3% loan. I mean, yeah, I'm not paying a lot of interest, but I lost $200,000 of my principal value. That's not good. But what if I keep that for 20 years? Is there a price point where paying more at a higher rate or a little bit lower at a higher rate makes sense? I don't know. I don't have that information. At some point I will. Right now, gold, silver, and Bitcoin are all screaming. There is no alternative. I wouldn't call gold screaming. If you look at the chart here, let's go and look at, where's my TradingView, since I won't be using TradeStation much anymore. I'll go down to my metals page. Look at gold. I wouldn't call it screaming. Had a pretty aggressive sell-off the other day, kind of basing and stuck there. It was just slightly down today. Not that big of a deal, but I wouldn't call this screaming. Silver continuing its slide. It's down to 1.5% today on SLV, the silver futures. So not great. And cryptocurrencies, as we've seen over the past couple weeks, have been doing phenomenal. I don't know why my Bitcoin is no longer on this list. That's kind of interesting. There it is down there. Bitcoin obviously taking a pretty big hit today, but I'll take a 3% drop after almost a 75% rally. I'm okay with that anytime. Bring it on. Cool, Brendan. Show me charts anytime. I love charts. Here's what we have cooking for today with regards to earnings. Now, some of you may have seen that Disney reported earnings and had a pretty significant increase in their subscriber base, which is obviously a very good thing. I didn't really think that we would see their subscriber base jump given the fact that I think most people were buying in on COVID. Well, here is the Disney chart. You can see the 5-minute aftermarket today. They went from about 179, currently trading at 188, so a big pop of up to the tune of about 6% on earnings. They beat by 40%. So their estimate was 57 cents. I'll bring it up for you guys over there. Their estimate was 57 cents. They came out at 80 cents. So that's a huge beat. You also had Baidu and Canadian Solar beat handily. I mean, Canadian Solar really just blew it out of the water. They actually made money this time, which is pretty impressive. And then you can see down there, you had Baidu down almost 4%, even though they had a 24% beat on earnings. All right, let's go. One last chart here. I wanted to bring up Canadian Solar because you would think that having a blowout earnings of this, 158% blowout of earnings and showing a profit, you think they'd be just skyrocketing, right? Wah, wah. Pretty thinly traded anyway, but not a lot of major price action based off of that earnings announcement for Canadian Solar. All right, here's what I have for you guys for mañana. And again, I'm sorry I didn't have Sam Evans in the program. He actually had a business meeting come up, which was very important. But we'll get him on next week, I promise. Just unfortunately, things happen at the last second. So for 8/13, Friday the 13th, yes, dun, dun, dun. I should come up with some gloomy music in the background. Really don't have too much going on with regards to economic announcements. You see a euro trade balance, import prices for the U.S., and then University of Michigan consumer sentiment, as well as inflation expectations happening at 7 a.m. All right, that's it. Hopefully you guys enjoyed that. Again, I know there was probably eye-rolling material for some of you because you are in charge of your personal finances. You are in charge of your debt, and you understand the importance of it. But again, you may have family members or friends who are deep in debt and can't seem to get out and just don't understand. Send them this show. Get them back. Get them this formula right here. Mine is D plus E equals DI. That disposable income piece, right? If that DI is negative or a red number, you will constantly be in a losing position. Constantly. And you'll just dig your hole deeper and deeper and deeper and just pay for it down the road. So get that positive number on your disposable income. Even if it's $1, great. Now we can start to modify our expenses, our debt, maybe even increase income and make those numbers even better and hopefully get us to that point that you can build your wealth with good debt and get rid of that bad debt garbage, which just brings you down. Shinobi, I'm wrapping up, buddy. It was a debt show today. We talked about good debt versus bad debt, and I gave some examples which hopefully help people get out of a bad situation. I'm definitely guilty of it. I went to the fair last night because the OC fair is right by my house here, and I rode the electric bikes over there. And it's tough because you walk around, it's like, ooh, all this stuff that I want to buy. And this is how my mind thinks. I might find a good or a product, a good services out there that I really, really like. For example, I'm just making this up. Here's a pretty awesome LED flashlight, right? I could go to the fair and find somebody's, this is the laser beam flashlight. It's $49. And they always get you excited and you end up buying stuff. And what I end up doing is I will literally walk away from the guy's booth or gal's booth, and I'll go online and see if I can find that same flashlight. And normally, instead of paying $49 there, I might be able to find it for $25 somewhere else. Same flashlight. And it's like, I feel bad because I'm hurting that individual by not supporting him at the fair, but also your prices are 2x normal. That's that's $24 I can put in my pocket and help my debt get better. I can pay down whatever I want. I can save more. I can take that extra $24 I'm saving on the flashlight and I can go put that in a crypto account, or I can go put that in my stock account, or I can go put it in a CD and get some interest on it. So I'm very frugal when it comes to that. But if I want something, obviously I buy it. For example, I was talking about the electric bikes. I bought 5 electric bikes and I got them at an unbelievable deal. And I went down to the bike store and the cheapest bike they have is $2,200. And I'm thinking, man, I could start a business just buying these electric bikes and selling them. But always see if you can find the best deal for yourself. Don't be impulsive. Save money on transactions. Be frugal. Don't be the miser, but certainly think about your money and be frugal with it. Mike says, you don't need brackets? Brackets for... Are you talking bracket orders? I do bracket orders. I do bracket orders all the time, especially in the morning for early morning trades. Like, for example, SPY was on my list today for short opportunities. So had to entry, stop loss, and price target, set off conditional stop orders. Got me in, had a little bit of profit, didn't hit my target, rallied up, stopped me out. Bummer, but yes, I do use brackets, if that's what you're referring to as brackets. Yes, 100%, Brendan. That's why I brought that up. Mastering debt is a prerequisite to mastering trading because it's all about rules. It's all about understanding how one thing impacts the other, being responsible, having a plan in place, risk management. It's risk management, absolutely. Cool. All right, guys, that's going to do it for me. Again, if you have any comments, questions, feedback, let me know. You can email me at TraderMerlin@gmail.com. Tomorrow, not really sure what's going to be going on for tomorrow's show. I will probably talk a little bit about some crypto because there are some interesting things that have happened in the last 24 hours in the crypto space. I don't need brackets on my formula. Maybe I do. Is my formula wrong? Well, because I have the brackets here for a reason, I think, because what you want to do is you want to take your debt and expenses and combine those and then subtract that from income. So I think I do need the brackets. Order of operations, easier way. I think it's just easy to show the ones in brackets are the negative things, the pieces that bring you down, and then the I is, I could paint them green and red. that might make this picture a little bit better. Now the beauty of doing things live. Let's see, we'll go like this, and this is thanks to Mike. We're going to just extend the show to do some drawing here and color code things because we want that to be red, and I want this to be green because that is the ultimate goal, and now I have a better looking formula. There you go. There you go, Mike. That's it. Color-coded. All right, everybody, that's going to do it for me. Tomorrow, we'll be drinking an Angel's Envy whiskey with a nice shout-out to the proprietor of, or actually the individual who sent that bottle over to me. So it's going to be a great Whiskey Friday. Looking forward to it. Hope you guys have a fantastic trading session tomorrow. Be safe, be green. I will see you guys tomorrow. And send in comments and questions. If you want to know anything, want to talk about markets, just send it on in. Happy to talk about things. Again, thanks to the individuals who sent in questions. So Gabe and Patrick, thank you for the questions. I appreciate it. I'll see you guys tomorrow. Take care.